Yeah, this season.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's going to be another one.
Yeah. Season
And
8 is
hopefully
already
Disky will-
confirmed.
And hopefully Disky will be in it.
Oh, you can't have a season of MLP these days without concluding Dear Discord.
Oh, and it seems like I did tell the future. There was another villain from 1,000 years ago.
True dat.
Although this time it wasn't one that Celestia Luna pissed off.
Anyway. Well,
It was over 1,000 years ago. Because Celestia and Luna were still fools at the
okay, one
time.
second. Before we get too deep into this. Season 7, episodes 25 and 26. The finale of Season 7, Shadow Play.
Ah, ponies.
Yes.
Depons.
As the best elements within us can spread light and virtue, and I know ponies who represent them all. Strength, bravery, healing, beauty, hope, and sorcery. Who came up with the element characteristics that we learned from the book in episode 1? Or 2. Might have been 2.
Probably Celestia or whoever was, writing the history of Celestia's reign, because Celestia and Luna had gotten the elements from the Tree of Harmony to defeat Discord, and it was at that point that either they decided on the names of the elements, or somebody else decided it after that, after a description of the elemental powers, and it converted them based upon the current characteristics as opposed to what their initial intent was.
Well, I think the whole
Kind of lost in translation shit.
But well, we have strength with Rockhoof, we have bravery with Flash Magnus, healing with Meadowbrook, beauty with Mistmane, hope with Somnambula, and sorcery with Star Swirl. Now, an interesting thing about this episode is it does have some notes that sort of, I'm going to go a little Lucas with this, but they rhyme with the first episode, with the original, the premiere. Could you, Mandark, you keep getting real close to your mic and doing something.
Sorry.
Okay, anyway, because I keep hearing.
He apologized and does it twice.
I'm not even that close to my mic.
Okay. Anyway, it was just a bit of whoosh, whoosh. Anyway, but I think this sort of, and there's a few notes that rhyme here, and I know it's a little weird, but if you look, okay, they both start with a storybook, talking about the elements, in this case, the pillars, and both set off, they both show the current elements going out and showing a display of their element. In this case, showing the pillars element, which I think also sort of applies to the current elements. The current elements both cover what the virtue that they are noted as, and also the virtue that they're connected with the pillar they're connected with. So, strength is Rockhoof, and honesty is Applejack, but she's actually both. She's actually honesty and strength. Flash Magnus, bravery. Rainbow Dash, loyalty. Rainbow Dash shows both. and I'll get more into detail as we go along, but healing from Mage Meadowbrook, Fluttershy has kindness, Fluttershy has done both. Beauty, Mistmane, Rarity, Generosity, she's done both. Somnambula, Hope, Laughter, Pinkie Pie, Pinkie has done both. Star Swirl, Sorcery, and Magic for Twilight, but those are basically the same. It's roughly the same. I mean, I'm sure there's some nitpicky little definitional differences, but same.
Basically the only real difference is the academic aspect of it. Sorcery is the academic application of magic.
Yeah, sorcery sacrifices little children.
I have one.
But even if you go with that, yeah, I wasn't aware of the technical differences. I know you're more informed on that sort of situation.
Basically, a sorcerer is a trained magic user, and magic is just the raw talent.
Yes.
It's kind of like a mutant and an X-Man.
Yeah.
Basically.
Or a scientist and an engineer. The scientist comes up with the ideas of how these things should work, and engineers take that information and put it into practice.
Not quite, because scientists still have training.
Well,
and it's the training that it is. Kind of like, somebody who can draw and somebody who actually has an art degree.
Anyway, but either way, they're both, Twilight has shown both sorcery and magic. So all of them have at some point shown both traits. So anyway, and then, going on the rhyming thing, and then a villain appears from 1,000 years ago.
Over 1,000 years ago, technically.
Yeah, but around a millennia ago, which was a mess. And then they are reformed. This one is but this is what episode 1, the whole arc of this is sort of, what if we redid episode 1 and 2? What if we did the first and second episode again, over again? And we could have all this character development. We could have all this. How would we go about that? This is kind of, I think, they thought, this is what we, this is what we would do now if we could go back and change that. Not to say episode 1 and 2 were bad, but they didn't have the character development to work from. Though, if you're looking back at it purely, sort of, look at these things. Luna, basically blasting Nightmare Moon good instead of what they did with Stygian and talked him good and pulled him out of being bad. They separated him from the evil. And so this is, if 1 and 2 were done better, this is sort of what that is. I mean, it's got big differences, and mostly in the middle with them going out to get the artifacts instead of, actually just hitting the artifacts in one place like they did with the elements.
Yeah, and even the villain was a creature of darkness that wanted to put the land in forever darkness.
Yeah, there was a lot of rhyming and sort of things going with this, but let's keep going through the thing. So we're introduced to a voiceover by Star Swirl, reminiscent of the storybook element of Season 1, about the 6 pillars and their aspects that have been scattered throughout Season 7, which was, I like that everything was, we were already
I liked
introduced.
that they tied it all together, all of the, the fictional stories that they did in the camping trip, and the Mistmane, and kind of like how they did with when they first got the keys to unlock the Tree of Harmony.
Yeah, except for the thing with the unlocked box with the keys, whereas that one we knew the box existed, and then they went and found the keys for it. This, we didn't know the box existed, and it was put at the end instead, and we found out at the end that this was what it was. I mean,
they didn't know when they were getting the keys what the keys were.
Well, but they knew that they needed to get the keys. This, we didn't know that this was coming necessarily, and they didn't really foreshadow until the last episode that this was sort of coming. And the last episode before Shadowplay, they didn't really hint
foreshadow.
They didn't foreshadow it. Yeah, they didn't hint at it at all until this. We just thought we were getting lots of lore, which was really cool. Who's gonna fight having some lore? But some cool stories, some cool legends from this universe, and to take all those and the last episodes of the season, bring all of that back into play, is really nice. It set it up. It was a nice little surprise, and it was like, oh, look, all this lore, and then boom, it's really cool. Scattered throughout season 7, though Mage Meadowbrook was also mentioned in the Cutie map in season 5 as the original wielder of Starlight's fraudulent Staff of Sameness, which turned out to be a fraud, but that was a bit redundancy, but but interesting. In some of the visual bits in that storybooks, they had the guts to use a pentagram for Star Swirl. They actually did use it, because in the picture, in fact, I think the picture I decided to use, they actually do have the pentagram right above his head. It doesn't, it's not a pentacle, which would be the pentagram, but with a circle around it. But they do have a pentagram, yeah. So, turns out with these pillars that another brought them together, but seemingly betrayed them and fell to the shadows when he was cast out, which we find out more in episode 2. So, they planted the seed of the Tree of Harmony for the future near Ponyville, which would have been the seat of power, given that the old castle was eventually or already built there, which we do see it, what I think is the castle the two sisters use at when Stygian comes back in the tale towards the end. We see the castle of the two sisters, assuming it's the castle of the two sisters, because it looks very much the same as Nightmare Moon's castle in the Cutie Remark. So I am assuming that is the castle of the two sisters. And we don't see anything in Canterlot, so other than an observatory. There's an observatory up where Canterlot is, but that's all we see up there. I wonder if the Everfree grew up wild due to the influence of the tree, and that combined with the memories of Luna prompted the movement of the capital to Canterlot itself. The tree apparently grew up in the time it took the sisters to reach their current physical maturity, because they were apparently very young when Star Swirl left, and they, according to them, they never met the other pillars.
Yeah, so it was more than a century. It was probably maybe a century and 20 years or something. Because depending on how old it takes for an alicorn to mature.
Yeah, and how far was the pillars fighting Stygian? How far back from that 1,000 years where Discord was the confrontation with the Star Swirl? Because we know 1,000 years ago was Nightmare Moon, but how far behind that was
Luna, and was Discord, and how far beyond before that was the Stygian and all of the others.
Yeah, well, the pillars must have come first, because otherwise the elements don't exist, and I think they used the elements to freeze Discord. So they must have had Star Swirl, then they grew up, defeated a whole bunch of villains around this time, possibly with the elements, when they hit maturity.
Actually, I don't think it was unless they did Discord in before they met up with the other villains. They didn't use the elements because they got the elements specifically to defeat Discord.
Oh yeah. So
they were teenagers. Well, they looked like teenagers at least.
Yeah. So they had Star Swirl and the pillars left. The tree grew up. They grew up. They got the elements, defeated Discord. Then a bunch of other villains showed up. They defeated them. And
then Luna went insane and got banished to the moon.
Then we got Nightmare Moon. Then everything's... once Nightmare Moon was banished to the moon, the whole thing went kind of quiet for 1,000 years. Then Nightmare Moon came back, and the entire fecal material hit the air circulation device.
Pretty much. I mean, don't forget T-Rack.
Yeah.
Well, T-Rack was one of the myriad of baddies between Discord and Luna.
Yeah, that the sisters got rid of. I assume the sisters got rid of.
Unless, of course, by sending Luna to the moon and implanting the elements within the Tree of Harmony, it created kind of a harmonic bubble that created a kind of, bad shit won't happen when, because of the elements of harmony, spreading their glow of power or whatever it is. But because the ponies removed the elements from the tree, it broke that power and all the baddies can come back.
But at any rate, turns out Star Swirl's horn writing is illegible to Twilight in some places. Luckily, Starlight's writing is worse, so she can make it out. Which makes sense, given she used one of his spells to do the time travel.
And I mean, speaking as somebody who's used to reading really bad handwriting, it's not that far-fetched. Because if you can read really, really bad handwriting, reading somebody else's is not that difficult. Or horn writing, technically.
Yeah, but I imagine the same principles apply. So we find out that their last stand was at Ponehenge, at the base of Foal Mountain.
Ponehenge.
Which you had a note about Ponehenge, about what you saw in Ponehenge.
Yeah. The runes that they had written said pony rules. Ponirules. In Anglo-Saxon runic, which I used to read and write as a kid to pass notes and stuff in code.
Pony rules.
Because I was a nerd. Yeah, pony rules. Yeah. That's what it says on the on one of the pillars.
That's great.
One quick question, kind of a diversion. Who's curious? Do the ruins have a Y at all, or is it I just the best ruin for that?
I think they have a Y. Although, yeah, they have a Y. It's kind of an alteration of one of the other letters, but it still exists. It's been a long time since I've read and written it, but it does exist.
Well, anyway. So they head there, and after Twilight casually puts down the diary, a sort of hollow projection of magic of the battle to contain the Pony of Shadows begins, where the pillars sealed themselves and the Pony of Shadows away. Twilight, it's like the Sunburst and Starlight are like, oh, it's gonna take forever to figure out what Star Swirl did there. I mean, it was cool seeing it, but it's gonna take forever. Twilight's like, I figured it out. Of course you did, Twilight. Of course you did. This is why
Good
you're
girl,
the
now
element
have a
of
cookie.
magic. You're the element of magic for this reason.
Yeah, the Y is actually a variation of the U. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Twilight, you're the element of plot moving.
Shake that plot. I mean, move that plot.
Hugging plot, that's Pinky.
Uh,
She had that moment at the end where she's describing, or it's later in the episode where she's trying to explain the elements and their different things, and she hugs Applejack's butt.
oh,
Really
yeah.
awkward. So Twilight, being the ever-talented magic scholar, has the spell figured out. Star Swirl sent them all to Limbo. Could you not all have astronomical features as part of your names? Keeping this sort of thing straight. Anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, one thing I figured out, I thought that was kind of... I realized this, and I'm not, having seen Pwnhenge, I didn't realize it until I saw Twilight pull up her diorama. But interesting that the map room is almost a mini Pwnhenge itself. If a bit more refined, and with the map in the center instead of a well. But it's essentially Pwnhenge redone.
Well, it is based off of the original tree that the pillars created.
Yeah.
And
But
the circle is a very common mystical center. So
which would it would make sense that the sort of array would always be sort of that, if pony magic works off of some sort of basic sort of rules, then arrays maybe 6-pointed arrays are very powerful in pony magic, which is interesting that Star Swirl has a pentagram. But then again, a 6-pointed star would look more like a Star of David, and that would be weird. It would be a little awkward. A little awkward for them. Why has she got a Jewish star on his head? Let's see. Okay, Twilight wants to release them from the time lock, but in order to do so, they must collect the 5 other artifacts attached to the pillars. They're wondering, well, where are we going to do that? That's going to take forever. That's another note in this thing, is every time it seems like, that's going to take a while to figure that out. This could take years. And it's like, nope, they figured it out 10 seconds. This time the map obliges instead of Twilight going, eh. I mean, some of it is sort of afforded in what they've already kind of established as the character's strengths. Twilight is a massive nerd and has read and memorized basically everything Star Swirl has ever written, so...
It's like, time for a montage of collecting all the stuff.
Yeah, so Twilight understanding the spell before anybody else makes sense, given her idolization of Star Swirl. Her understanding of his thought processes, is, quite believable in that respect. And the map showing them the way is not that crazy, considering it is connected to the pillars itself. And so it was birthed from the pillars themselves, so it being able to detect something else attached to the pillars, not that crazy. So yeah, now we get the montage of basically sort of the trip to the castle of the two sisters, sort of redone. AJ heads off with a shovel and saves an archaeological dig from an enormous boulder that was set loose by an Indiana Jones dressed pony. It's a feat of super strength. This reveals the shovel's hiding chamber. She also tells them the truth, though they don't believe her, about Rockhoof's legend, until she, catches the big boulder. Which seems interesting that, it's always been an interesting thing, is trying to figure out what the element, what is Earth Pony strength really like? What is a standard Earth Pony strength like? And Applejack has never been shown to be that strong. She's strong, but not that strong. That's like Maud chunking rocks sort of strong.
Roar.
And so it's interesting to see that perhaps being near the shovel gave her additional strength. It made her give her super strength. There's something about the proximity to that increased her strength. But then again, she knew it would work, so maybe she's just that strong naturally. There's other people that suggest that Earth Pony strength is something they can turn on and turn off, because they're already strong, and when doing what they do,
that's their equivalent of magic, because Pegasi being able to fly is their version of magic, and unicorn horn magic. So strength is the Earth Pony's magic.
Yeah, and they can turn that on and off at will to have, so they don't. It's the world of cardboard issue with Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I live in a world of cardboard. I'm afraid they're going to put a hoof through a door by knocking on it if they don't turn off their super strength.
Yeah.
And somebody used to using their strength as often as Applejack is probably going to be pretty well adept at it. Rarity finds Miss Maine's garden in disarray, and her descendant protective of the flowers she needed. She thought the garden beyond repair, so Rarity generously restores the garden to beauty, and is then allowed to take the flower that had been the only consistently beautiful thing.
It's like, okay, that'll be 1,000 bits.
So,
I'll give you a flower instead.
Ooh, that's just what I needed. Anyway. Dash takes Spike with her to the Dragonlands, where they surf lava. Turns out Garble has found the shield and is using it as his board. Garble races Spike for it, but when he loses, he doesn't give it up and threatens Spike. Dash stands up to Garble, bravery, and tricks him into putting the shield down before he takes off. In the race, but she retrieves the artifact, loyalty. She gives up the race to get the thing she needs for the team.
It's funny, that lava racing thing reminded me of, I think, Spy Kids 3.
Huh?
There was a movie called Spy Kids 3. They raced lava on surfboard type things like they did on the show.
Uh-huh. Oh, Spy Kids 3. I thought you were saying Spike hits 3. I'm like, 3 what? What is Spike hitting 3 of?
But anyway,
We're a little garbled there.
Garble.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
It's not. Thanksgiving is a month away, or
Not really. It's only like
a couple.
It's only 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away, and I still haven't done any of my costumes.
I want Turkey Day.
It'll be here soon.
I do too, because it's Doctor Who weekend, but I don't want it because I have costumes to build.
Anywho, Fluttershy and Cattail relocate the bees so that the bioanimals can get to the water without disrupting the bees by using the mask and Fluttershy's wings. She moves the nest. Kindness. She already demonstrated healing in a Health of Information by healing Zecora, so she's already proven that aspect, or shown that aspect before.
Yep.
So,
And she healed the ecosystem of the bayou by relocating the bees and allowing the other animals to thrive.
yeah. Pinky and Daring Do explore the acid pit with Dew on the bellows and Pinky in a diving suit. Turns out the blindfold of Somnambula was holding up the drain on the goo.
That goo, what the heck? It was radioactive.
Anyway.
That explains Pinkie Pie. She secretly thrives on radiation.
Or maybe it was Glowpaz just been ground into a fine powder and mixed with water, and it somehow makes that sort of goo. Let's see.
So it's Goopaz instead of Glowpaz?
Hope was represented by her travel across the goo during their first visit, and Pinky is almost always funny in some way. She's constantly funny, so.
I think the whole, this blindfold was in the way. Isn't that what you were looking for? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit of humor. So, Starlight has her reservations about bringing them back, given that they probably knew what they were doing. Turns out she was right, as the shadow returns as well.
Yeah, I knew that was Kevin's like, I think the villain might be coming back with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a given. With the whole, they knew what they were doing, and it's kind of sad that she's become the voice of reason over the two nerds.
Yeah, well, Twilight was as hasty as she was because, you know, she loves Star Swirl. He's her idol. I mean, it's, you know, it's like a Buddhist getting to meet Buddha. I imagine that would be a big deal. You know, it's that sort of moment for her. I can meet him.
It would have been funny if they came back without the Pony of Shadows. Okay, episode's over.
But Twilight, in her haste, hadn't concocted any backup plans. So, Shadow destroys Pwnhenge, makes sure the spell can't be used again. He and Star Swirl are both in a weakened state from the events from a millennia ago. Twilight and Starlight together turn him away for the moment. So, you know, it's good that they, you know, it's kind of, you know, Star Swirl plays a big role in these last two finales we've had. Three. I think the QU Remark was a finale as well, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So she's like the past three finales, she's had some key element to it. So they head back to the map room where Star Swirl realizes that the castle was built from the seed they planted so long ago. He explains the elements complete with hugging AJ's butt and throwing sparkles into the air for magic.
Booty hugging. That's how you get pink eye, Pinky.
How would you be able to tell? Anyway, Star Swirl hypothesizes that the stored magic in the elements could be used to defeat the Pony of Shadows, but Twilight mentions that doing so would lose their power forever, and it will have consequences for Equestria, which would, you know, the vines from Princess Twilight Sparkle come to mind immediately with other things down the line. So
Discord's like, wait, the elements are gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Discord's good now.
Yeah. He's got a morality leash with Fluttershy.
Yeah, they don't need the elements to keep him in check. They just have to have Fluttershy's disapproving look. No more Tuesday tea if you do that. Oh, but Flutty.
Yes. So at this point he is well contained. He can still be cheeky, but nothing too bad. So
At
Twilight
this
feels-
point, it's more of a playful cheeky than a
yeah.
let's destroy the planet cheeky.
Well, destroying the planet is not necessarily a cheeky thing to do.
It can be if you're a Q.
Yeah, I suppose. So Twilight feels down for causing the problems with her haste. She does find a spell that could keep the pillars there, but it would still lose the elements. Starlight has the idea to not banish, but Twilight is still blinded by her admiration for Star Swirl and is committed not to question its decision to banish as a way of regaining some face with him. Which, Twilight, remember, he doesn't understand friendship. You had to complete his spell for him because of that. That's why you're an alicorn, and he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, apparently, areas of darkness there's a little slight bit of filler here, but it's okay. It does get some extra lore. Areas of darkness for the Pony of Shadows to draw power from have decreased greatly, apparently. Ghastly Caverns became Ghastly Gorge, so it's no longer dark, but I guess it is still a bit of a wasteland.
It's still pretty ghastly.
Yeah. And apparently through erosion, but for a millennia, that's really fast for erosion. They must have been already on the verge of collapse when the pillars
or what you call erosion, we call more monsters from 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, pretty much.
Tyrek misplaced a foot in Ghastly Caverns and a hoof and broke down some of the ceiling of it, and boom, Ghastly Gorge.
Chocolate rainstorm flooded the gorge and boom, flooded the cave and wore it down. Or
Discord on a whim just went book. I don't think this is I don't like this. This is dark and mysterious. I like Happy Canyon. I'm gonna put a happy little canyon here. There are no mistakes, just happy little canyons.
Yes.
Anyway, so the Appaloosian Wastes are now a popular square dancing place. And Manhattan used to be shrouded in eternal night, but it's now lit up like the 4th of July. Back at HQ, Twilight has completed the spell. Starlight is initially not interested, but her friends stand up for her, and he eventually relents when Mage Meadowbrook says it just work. The map points to the Hollow Shades, a place abandoned eons ago.
Rainbow's like, I think I might have some family there.
Yeah. You've got some family everywhere. You look around hard enough anywhere, you're going to find an apple at some point, or an apple relative.
I guess the apple really does fall far from the tree.
Well, considering the trees are everywhere, the apple doesn't have to fall far from them. Rainbow calls it a supervillain tracker. No offense. To which Starlight gives AJ's "say what now?" eyebrow raise, which was brilliant. Just this, really.
I love that. Like, no offense, of course. Like,
Yeah, tact is not Rainbow Dash's strength. Starlight again brings up the prospect of reformation, but Star Swirl says, once a villain, always a villain, which gets a little deep for her.
Yeah.
Starlight starts asking questions of the pillars about Shadow, and I think I left out a bit in there where she kind of confronts Twilight about it. It's a good thing, he wasn't around when you decided to be my friend, essentially.
Yeah. It's a good thing he wasn't around when I decided to reform, or maybe I'd be stuck in a limbo too.
Or, a place where everybody has two legs.
Yeah, either shuffled off to the human world or shuffled off to limbo. Which is basically Starlight reminding Twilight of her own lesson that she taught her student, which she brings up at the end. So,
And it has happened so many times already within their tenure as superheroes. So, yeah. Here's another baddie who can be reformed. So let's just lock him away again. Yeah, because that worked so well with Discord.
yeah. Well, actually, it was working just fine for the moment. But anyway. So the pillars assumed that the enchantment was meant to steal the powers for them for himself. Oh, wait, I skipped down a few things. After a time, Stygian tried to ask questions of the pillars about Shadow. They find out his name was Stygian, and he brought them together, though he was not powerful himself. He's a bit of a Sunburst type character. He wasn't powerful himself, but he did a lot of research, and he didn't bring them together. He's more of a Phil Coulson at in that regard.
Yeah.
He brought them together to fight the Sirens. Their first sort of mission was to bring down the Sirens.
The Sirens were their Loki.
Yeah, they that's what brought them together as a team. After a time, Stygian took artifacts from the pillars to do some sort of spell, but the pillars caught him and cast him out without asking anything about what he was, not really listening or wondering what the spell was for. Then again, would they have believed him? So he returned to face them with the shadow powers at what appears to be the Castle of the Two Sisters, based on the pristine version in the Cutie Remark Part 2 under Nightmare Moon, though the princesses claim to never have met any of the other pillars. So the pillars were at what became the Castle of the Two Sisters, but the sisters weren't there because they said they had never met anybody but Starswirl. Starswirl was the only pillar they had any sort of interaction with.
Well, if you've read The Journey of the Two Sisters, which is at least semi-canon because it is official Hasbro story. It's Journal of the Two Sisters, sorry. They weren't living at the castle for a very long time. They were actually had to build it. And Starswirl was there helping them build the castle. So the pillars could have been using it as kind of a, fortress or whatever, while the princesses were not there.
Yeah.
But if they were building it, then it was already built at the time of Stygian's interaction with the pillars. It was already basically finished.
And it could have been a thing where Starswirl was just keeping the other pillars secret from them.
I don't know. But at any rate,
or the princesses were too busy with princess duties to actually focus in on
meet any of them, even though they were in their house. But anyway.
Hey, when we have house guests, I'm always hiding from them, so
Anyway, where was I? Okay, the pillars assumed that the enchantment was meant to steal the power from them for himself. Here's where it said. This is where Starlight brings up the better decision Twilight made about her, and makes me think of this moment. Sort of reminds me, 'twas friendship that stayed Twilight's hoof. Sort of, 'twas pity that stayed Bilbo's hand.
Friendship.
This moves Twilight somewhat in spite of Starswirl's bullheadedness. Remember, Twi, he wasn't able to complete the spell you did because he didn't understand friendship. So they sneak Stygian out in the hollow shades and fall into the Well of Shadows. Stygian was tempted by the power of the shadows and fell. His movement kind of reminds me a little bit of Tim Curry's character from Fern Gully, if you've seen that. It's sort of slippery, and smooth, and slidey.
Wasn't that Fern Gully 2, though?
I think that was the first one.
Mm,
I don't remember. I
He
thought
might
it
have
was
come back for the second one, but
Sludge.
yeah, I don't remember what it was called. But he was a sludgy.
his
sort
name
of-
was Hex or Hexus
Hex.
or something.
Hex with the double X, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember. it
I
was
just
the Tim
remember his
Curry
song was
character.
Toxic Love.
I
Yeah.
love that song.
It's
Yes.
Tim freaking Curry. It's
Oh,
Tim
how can you not
freaking
love
Curry.
the song? It's Tim Curry.
It's Tim freaking Curry. Come on, the man is just a legend.
Seriously. And yet I know people who don't know who he is until you say, the dad from Wild Thornberrys, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Movie
Really?
I've not seen yet.
It.
Huh?
The
Oh, yeah,
original
It. And I like him better than the new one.
I haven't seen the new one.
I
but-
saw part of the new one. I'm like, eh.
But anyway, let's see. He claims the pillars were selfish, while Star Swirl contends that Stygian was by stealing power. Starlight again pleads that this is a friendship problem because, the map has only, like she mentioned earlier, the map has only sent them to friendship problems.
Friendship problem.
No, as Ramodash said, it's a supervillain tracker.
So, portals open and they begin to push him in, but Stygian begins to emerge from the shadowy mass. Twilight goes in after him. Turns out he wanted to copy the artifacts, not steal them, and the confusion led to him being cast out. Twilight and then adjoining Starlight try to convince him to abandon the shadow. Starlight saying, yes, if there's someone who can reform you, who can bring you out of this, it's freaking Twilight. When she's got her head on straight. So he tries, but the shadow's hold is strong. The rest of the pairs and all the unicorns present pull him from the shadow and banish the shadow instead. The elements were reserved because the magic was healing magic instead of banishing magic, or at least that was the theory. So, day is saved, Stygian's back, the pillars are back, the shadow was banished, and now they go back to Canterlot, and Star Swirl meets with Celestia. and Star Swirl comments on how big the sisters have gotten.
It's all that cake.
Oh yeah, I missed something. Finally,
Take that in as
There's
many
some-
ways as you like. How big they've gotten.
finally, there's another pony in Equestria that's older than the two sisters.
Several ponies now that are older than the two sisters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Depending on what their age was when Star Swirl left, but I would assume that the pillars were all older than them because they said they were young when Star Swirl left. So
Yeah.
Star Swirl praises Twilight's wisdom, but Twilight does give her pupil credit for
That's a shitty comment.
her pupil credit for reminding her of the lessons she herself taught her. So Star Swirl has decided to wander the land, while the rest will head back from whence they came. So he's going to become Gandalf. He's going to wander around a bit.
Yes, the beard and the hat.
Perhaps he will go visit the hobbits in Ponyville from time to time. And I imagine Cadence was annoyed. Was she there? I don't think she was there.
No, she was too busy keeping an eye on her Alicorn baby and
Yeah.
dealing with princessy duties in the Crystal Kingdom.
Yeah. But I know
Higher.
she's kicking herself like, I really wanted to meet Star Swirl, but I guess he's gonna be around for a bit, so it's like, oh, I'll just meet him whenever he
Maybe
wanders
Twilight
up
will
here.
maybe Twilight will be like, you should go to the Crystal Empire. I mean, that was already gone when you were in power, right? You could go check it out. It's pretty cool.
Maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. whether in what order did things rise and fall? Anyway, but that's basically the end of Shadow Play.
My notes are on it. Or let's see. One, I would like their shadow powers. I mean, it made it look like somebody's horrible edgy OC.
Yeah.
How's it different from your OZ? No, I'm kidding. Joking. Yours isn't
Funny.
really that edgy.
Exactly.
Wait, are you talking about my red pony?
No, the Starfisher. It's not really edgy.
Oh,
It's just
that
sort
one.
of overpowered.
So was Star Source spell, you know, the one that Twilight finished? Was he going to use that spell on the pillars? Because for a while I thought it was going to be the elements, but
It must have been something to do with the.
It might have been a way to make the pillars stronger to defeat Shadow Man Pony.
Yeah, that might have been his first attempt, was to try and first he tried to strengthen the pillars by using that spell, a sort of a unity kind of synergy spell, where because they're together, because they're together, they become stronger than they are apart. Then if you add them up individually, they're not as strong as when they're all together. And that was his first tack, but he couldn't get it to work. And then noting that he couldn't get that to work, he might have settled on the banishment and said, okay, we're going to be banished, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up essentially the Tree of Harmony. We're going to set that up, and then we're going to seal ourselves with the Pony of Shadows, so that the Pony of Shadows can't hurt anybody, and maybe our influence, the magic from this crystal seed we're planting, will eventually help guard the realm, essentially.
And I mean,
Yeah.
that keeps in with what I said with why it was 1,000 years of calm and chill, because that's what they designed the tree for, to protect the entire realm on its own.
yeah.
It had a rough starting point, but once it got big enough,
Well,
once it got big enough, it actually worked.
yeah, and I mean, for a time, the princesses did take the thing out to defeat Discord, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked if the elements were out of the tree, and so the other monsters were all going about. And then once Luna got banished, Celestia put the elements back, and the tree did its business.
Well, the elements weren't back, were they? Because they were in.
Yeah,
No, they were like in the
They were in the Castle of the Two
Stone
Sisters
Balls.
when they were in the Stone Balls when Twilight found them.
Well, I mean, she didn't have them.
let's see. Well, one fan theory has officially been destroyed.
What?
So there was a fan theory that that Discord was actually Star Swirl after a really bad spell went wrong. I mean, it wasn't my theory, but it was a theory that had been floating around there.
Yeah.
I don't think the shadows are gone forever. Like, I think that the same thing that infected that pony is also the same thing that infected Luna.
It could be.
Yeah. That was just
Maybe Luna fell into the well of shadows.
Yeah, I don't know, but
Shadow
At least-
power go!
at least a big hunk of a very developed shadow being has been
Yeah,
sealed.
yeah. I think there's gonna be like something much bigger to do with it.
Okay. Anything else?
When is season 8?
I know they were already working on it, and I think it was a while back that they were already working on it. It's gonna be if it's ending in the fall. If we're ending in the fall, they basically, I think it works out to be. It'll probably be. It depends on when they started. If they started in the fall, probably fall of next year. If they started early enough, it might be spring. I know they've already worked on it. And I think it takes about a year to do a season, a calendar year in terms of from when they start to when they finish.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that though, and I don't know how early they started writing for season 8. Let me just look it up real quick.
What in the hell is that?
What?
Your costume for this year.
Ha ha ha.
Oh, good grief. Let's see.
It looks like you're trying to make a woman's Halloween costume. Can I suggest a sexy version of something no reasonable person would ever consider sexy? Oh, God.
It's clear.
And it's the
remember
help paperclip from the old Word documents.
I know. The one thing that was so unhelpful.
Exactly.
Okay, an official release date hasn't been announced, it doesn't look like. But on May 25th, 2017, Jim Miller confirmed that the 8th season was in production and will start airing in 2018, which means it was already being worked on in the spring. So if that's the case, then I'm going to say probably spring or early summer of next year.
Ooh, I wonder what villain's gonna come back for them to reform.
Yeah, in 1,000 years. From 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
The
Anyway.
only villain that's not from 1,000 years ago, well, not including Starlight, I think it's like Chrysalis.
Yeah, Chrysalis is basically the only one that's been not from a millennia ago. Okay. Any other thoughts before we close out this portion?
Nope, it was a good episode.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was season 1, episodes 1 and 2. It was that, but done better because they had more characters that were developed better.
And because Pony rules?
Yes.
That was funny.
It was. Because whenever I see in like movies and stuff old runes, I always pause it and see if I could read it. And a lot of them are just gibberish. You know, they're just like random letters strewn together to make it look cool. And I'm like, this is probably the same thing, but let me see what it says anyways. And I'm like, Poni. Okay, pony. Weird spelling, but okay. Rules, dude, it's an actual word.
Oh yeah, that's got to be something. If you're working with runes, if you're working with runes and why do I keep saying ruins instead of runes? Runes instead of runes or hieroglyphics. You know, you got to be wanting to make
put something fun in there. You know, like. There were a few times that I actually saw, like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like, so-and-so was here in Runic.
Yeah.
And supposedly some sort of spell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Probably
Might as well
guess
have
the
fun with
pony
it.
who wrote that too.
But yeah, that would be cool to if you saw that more in fictional stuff, in fictional or in historical things, like if they're in an archaeological area and you just see on the wall, you see runes lined out, and it's just it's the lyrics to "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" or something.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
No. Wait, no, that's not the song he tells him not to sing. It's a small world. No.
Something. I actually appreciate that they put that much thought into it instead of just putting random letters in there like most places, most movies and stuff do.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that the 6 pillars didn't disappear. Like, I kind of thought it was going to be like, okay, we've defeated the villain, now we must go back to our own time.
No,
Well,
because they were frozen in time. It's kind of like Fry in Futurama. He didn't go back all of a sudden when he woke up. They were frozen in time. So they didn't get returned to their old time because they were removed from time.
Yeah, they traveled in the one direction you can travel in time at the moment. Well, no,
Without causing detrimental effects.
Yeah, without any time travel spells, they moved forward. They just moved forward.
It was
with their time
basically
for them
just a stasis field. It was basically just a stasis field. They were frozen in time. They weren't actually taken from it,
And so, but this does add some interesting things they can get up to now that they're all back. Now, they've kind of sent them off by saying, okay, they're all going to go home and see how the world has changed in their homeland. Somnambula's probably going to go back to Somnambula and pose for another statue. And you're going to see Rockhoof is going to do that. And there's going to be lots of ponies who are like, historian ponies are like, yes, we would like to talk to you all the time. Like, exactly all the time, because we want to know exactly. It's like if you were suddenly dropped into a Star Trek like future, like you fell through a time hole and ended up in Star Trek sort of in the future. You think people would want a historical perspective of somebody who was literally there.
Exactly.
That's the sort of thing that's going to happen to these ponies, I figure. Some very studious ponies are going to want to ask them lots of questions. Star Swirl's he's gonna wander about.
Although that does make me kind of think about that one episode of Next Gen where the 3 people were put in stasis pods and woken up.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the wrong time.
It'd be that sort of situation. But the historians of the time would be absolutely thrilled to. We have records from that time, but we've never actually gotten to talk to somebody who experienced the time. What were the attitudes like?
Yes, they did.
Well,
they have somebody there, though. They have the princesses. Been there, done that.
Yeah, but they're
Bought
not
the T-shirt.
But they don't.
No, they didn't. They made the T-shirt.
Yeah, I guess they do have them, but the time just before them, I suppose, is also another blank. And they, even they might have forgotten some things in 1,000 years. So they they have a much fresher memory of that
Star
time.
Swirl gave them.
What?
Like what?
Like turning in that report that Star Swirl gave them.
Oh, the essays they owed? Yeah, that was a nice touch. It was like,
yeah.
As long as we don't have to turn in those essays we owed you from 1,000 years ago. Oh, and I wonder what Star Swirl's reaction would be if he found out about what happened with Nightmare Moon. I mean, everything's resolved before he was resolved. Everything happened after he went away and resolved before he came back. But what was his thoughts if he saw a glass?
His first nightmare night, even.
Oh yeah, well, what the heck is this?
It's like Nightmare Moon. Who's that?
that?
Well, for 1,000 years, Princess Luna was trapped on the moon and terrified children.
Celestia! What did I teach?
It's like, Luna, what were you doing? It was the Shadow's fault, I swear.
There should be like 2 pictures. One with Twilight's like, have a villain, make friends with them, and one with Star Swirl, have a villain, banish them.
Yes. But should be interesting to see what they do with them, because it's now if Twilight wants to geek out about Star Swirl, all she's got to do is go find him. He's wandering around somewhere, and he'll show up in Hobbiton eventually. He'll show up in the Shire from time to time to visit Twilight, I imagine. Yeah, that. The moments between them defeating the Pony of Shadow, the Shadow from off of Stygian, to the point where they go, where he goes off to wander the countryside.
The Shadow knows.
Those moments between the end of the mission and going and seeing Celestia and Luna, Twilight must have been geeking out a little bit.
A little bit.
I'm being generous here.
I have to admit, though, Stygian name is kind of weird. I mean, it's not like a normal pony name.
Yeah, it has a meaning. Styx is the river for the dead in Greek mythology. Stygian. Oh, yeah, okay. It's the same root. Of or relating to the river Styx.
Oh.
Extremely dark, gloomy, or forbidding. The Stygian blackness of the cave.
Wow, his name was really perfect then.
Yeah. Stygian dealing with the river Styx, the river of the dead. Charon ferries the dead over in Greek mythology. It was a very...
It's also a planet in Star Wars.
Okay. I'll take your word on it. Very meaningful names. Which the writers of the show tend to go towards. Rockhoof, that dug through rock, with a shovel, with super strong. So Rockhoof and Mistmane, she's got a Mistmane.